All right, ready to dive into a world that's both familiar and surprisingly complex.
Oh, I think I know where this is going.
Mosquitoes.
Yeah.
You sent over that top 5 mosquito facts video, the one by watchmojo.com, so it seems like you're already kind of ahead of the game when it comes to mosquito knowledge.
I try to stay informed, yeah.
But trust me, today we're going way beyond just the basics.
Sounds good to me. Let's do it.
Absolutely. And, that video dives right into some seriously innovative mosquito control methods being developed.
Yeah, it's not just about bug spray and citronella candles anymore.
Not at all.
Researchers are getting really creative, taking inspiration from mosquito biology to come up with targeted strategies.
That's interesting.
For instance, they're using sound traps that, they mimic the wingbeats of female mosquitoes
Wow.
to lure in and trap the males.
Pretty ingenious.
Yeah.
And then there's, the approach of targeting their kidneys, so to speak.
Right.
That sounds like something right out of a sci-fi movie.
A little bit, yeah. So mosquitoes have these organs that kind of function like kidneys, helping them regulate fluids.
Yeah.
And researchers are looking at ways to, disrupt these organs,
Interesting.
which could actually be a really effective way to control populations.
Okay, now that's some seriously next-level science.
Mm.
But the video also mentioned, some simpler solutions too. Low-tech stuff,
Oh, absolutely.
like traps made from recycled materials. It's kind of encouraging to see that effective mosquito control doesn't always require, all that cutting-edge technology.
Yeah, sometimes the simple solutions, they're the most practical. And they're definitely the most sustainable. And it's important to keep in mind that, even simple traps can make a big difference.
Right.
Especially when we're talking about mosquito-borne diseases, particularly in places that maybe have more limited resources.
Absolutely. Speaking of mosquito behavior, the video mentioned something.
Yeah.
Well, I have to admit, it made me squirm a little.
Oh.
Mosquitoes, well, peeing while they bite. Is that actually what's happening?
Okay, so it's not exactly peeing in the way that we usually think about it.
Okay.
It's more about fluid regulation.
Mm-hmm.
So when a mosquito feeds on blood, it takes in way more fluid than it actually needs.
Right.
So to compensate for that, it basically excretes the excess water and salt through its digestive system.
Okay, so maybe not technically pee, but still, not the most pleasant thought.
Yeah.
And of course, on top of that, they're injecting their saliva into us,
Right.
to keep the blood flowing, which of course is what causes that annoying itch.
Exactly. That saliva, it has anticoagulants in it to prevent clotting,
Mm-hmm.
but it also triggers our immune system.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and that results in, the red bumps and that itching we all know and definitely loathe.
Yeah. So how do we go from these kind of gross mosquito facts to something a little more hopeful? The video brings up this concept of mosquito factories, which, that sounds almost too good to be true.
Right.
Are these really the answer to ending diseases like malaria and dengue?
It's a very promising area of research, but it's definitely more complex than just, building a factory
Right.
and just churning out disease-free mosquitoes.
Sure.
The basic idea is to introduce a bacteria called Wolbachia into mosquitoes. And this bacteria, it basically makes them less capable of transmitting viruses like dengue and Zika.
So are we essentially giving mosquitoes a vaccine?
It's not a vaccine in the traditional sense, but it does involve manipulating their biology, to make them less hospitable to those disease-causing viruses.
Right.
What's really fascinating is that this Wolbachia infection, it can be passed down to their offspring.
Oh, wow.
So it has the potential to spread through a mosquito population over time.
That's incredible. And the video mentioned some really impressive results in Brazil,
Yeah.
with a significant decrease in both the mosquito populations and cases of dengue fever.
Yeah, those results are really encouraging. But, it's important to remember that each mosquito species and each disease really requires its own, tailored approach.
That makes sense.
Well, it works in one location or with one disease. It might not, it might not translate directly to others.
Right. So while mosquito factories hold a lot of promise, it's not a one-size-fits-all solution.
Exactly. It's a tool, but it's just one tool in a larger toolbox
Okay.
of strategies for, managing these mosquito populations and reducing that burden of disease.
Now, some scientists are even suggesting that we could genetically modify mosquitoes to, well, eliminate them entirely.
Hmm.
Is that even possible?
It's definitely a very active area of research. One approach involves, manipulating genes to make mosquitoes produce mainly male offspring.
Okay.
And since only females actually bite and transmit diseases, this could lead to, a population decline over generations.
It sounds almost too good to be true. But what about the consequences of wiping out an entire species?
Right.
The video brought up some concerns about the ecological impact of, taking such a drastic action.
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? Mosquitoes have been around for millions of years, and, they've evolved to occupy these specific niches
Mm-hmm.
in ecosystems worldwide. And while they may seem like, just pests to us, they play a role
Right.
in the food chain, both as predators and prey.
Right, right. They use the example of removing wolves
Oh, yeah.
from Yellowstone, which
Yeah.
led to, like, an overpopulation of deer
Right.
and just this whole cascade of, like, unintended consequences for the whole ecosystem.
It's a cautionary tale for sure.
Yeah.
It highlights just how interconnected nature really is.
Yeah.
Removing a species, even one that we, consider a nuisance, it can have these ripple effects that are really difficult to predict.
So it's not as simple as just saying, mosquitoes are bad, let's get rid of them.
It's definitely not that simple. It requires really carefully considering all of the potential ecological consequences.
Absolutely.
We need to understand the role they play, in their environments.
Mhm.
And whether their absence would actually create a void that could be filled by something even worse.
That's a sobering thought.
Yeah.
So while the idea of eliminating mosquitoes entirely, might be tempting, it's crucial to proceed with some real caution.
Yeah.
But then the video brought up this really interesting counter-argument from David Quammen, and he suggests that mosquitoes might actually be indirectly beneficial to humans
Oh, how so?
by, well, protecting those equatorial rainforests from human encroachment.
Hmm.
So a thought-provoking perspective, for sure.
Yeah.
The idea is that, those mosquito-borne diseases, they kind of act as a deterrent,
Okay.
making those areas less hospitable for us to settle.
Mm.
And that protects them from, deforestation and exploitation.
It's a pretty radical way of thinking about it.
It is. It makes you wonder if those regions would be, more vulnerable to human impact if mosquitoes weren't there to kind of, well, keep us at bay.
It's a really complex issue, that's for sure. And there are no easy answers. We tend to view mosquitoes just through the lens of our own discomfort and the diseases they carry, but their role in the ecosystem it's far more nuanced and definitely far more multifaceted than we often realize.
It seems like with mosquitoes, every time we kind of peel back a layer of this whole enigma,
Yeah.
we just find like even more complexity. We've talked
Yeah.
about like all the potential ecological impacts,
Mm.
of getting rid of mosquitoes completely.
Mm-hmm.
But the video didn't really get into the ethics of it all.
Right.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's a crucial part of this whole conversation, right? I mean, the ability to manipulate a species
Yeah.
or even eliminate it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that raises some really, really profound ethical questions.
It does.
Do we have the right to, play God, so to speak, even with a creature that, causes so much suffering?
It's a tough one. you know,
Mhm.
on the one hand, you've got mosquitoes that are responsible for so much suffering
Yeah.
through the diseases they spread. But on the other, I mean, they're part of the natural world. We have to think about like the bigger picture, the implications of our actions, right?
Absolutely. It's about finding that balance
Right.
between, human well-being and environmental responsibility. And it's not always an easy, clear-cut decision.
No.
Even if we could, just eradicate mosquitoes without any ecological harm, would it even be ethically justifiable? I mean, some would argue that, every species has a right to exist regardless of its impact on us.
Yeah, those are some seriously deep, like philosophical questions.
They are.
The video touched on kind of briefly this idea of selective eradication, like targeting only those disease-carrying species
Right.
and leaving the others unharmed. Would that be a more ethically sound approach?
It definitely addresses some of those concerns about, disrupting ecosystems, but the technology to be that precise,
Yeah.
it's still in its early stages.
I can imagine.
It's really challenging to target one specific species and not affect others. And even if we could, there's always the chance of unintended consequences down the line.
Right, right. So even with the best intentions, we could end up kind of creating new problems. It seems like every solution, comes with its own challenges.
And that's the nature of complex systems, right?
Right.
There are always trade-offs and there's always uncertainty. The key is to approach these challenges with a lot of humility and, a willingness to learn as we go.
Yeah. The video really focused on, the health impacts and the ecological impacts.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also curious about the economic side of things.
Yeah.
If we were to eradicate mosquitoes, would it be this huge financial boon? Or could there be, some unforeseen consequences on that front?
That's an excellent point. And honestly, it's one that's often overlooked.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. The economic benefits of getting rid of mosquito-borne diseases, it would be huge.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the healthcare costs saved,
Right.
the increased productivity from a healthier workforce,
Yeah.
the boost to tourism in regions that are, currently dealing with these diseases.
Right. It's mind-boggling to think about.
Yeah.
The scale of that.
Absolutely. I mean, you've got entire industries, right?
Yeah.
Built around mosquito control and disease treatment. Getting rid of those diseases would free up those resources for other priorities.
Absolutely.
And it could lead to major economic growth.
Especially, in developing countries.
Exactly.
But I imagine, there would be some job losses, right?
There would definitely be some economic restructuring, yeah.
Right.
But those job losses, they'd probably be offset by, growth in other areas.
Okay.
Like tourism, agriculture, infrastructure development. I see, yeah.
Overall, the benefits, I think, would far outweigh the costs.
This whole conversation is really, it shifted my perspective on mosquitoes.
Yeah.
I used to just see them as annoying pests.
Yeah.
But now I get it. I see how complex their impact is, on human health, on ecosystems, and even like we were talking about, the global economy.
It's a good reminder that even the tiniest creatures, they can have this, ripple effect on a really grand scale.
Right.
And it just underscores how important it is to make these decisions about, manipulating or eradicating species in a really informed way.
So for our listeners, what's the main takeaway here? What should they keep in mind as they kind of navigate this complex world?
Well, I think the most important thing is to approach this whole topic with a critical and nuanced lens.
Yeah.
Mosquitoes they're more than just pests.
Right.
They're a part of these intricate ecosystems.
Mm-hmm. And their presence or absence, it has really far-reaching consequences.
It's about weighing those potential benefits of eradication against the risks.
Yeah.
Both the ecological ones and the ethical ones, right?
Exactly. And recognizing that there are no easy answers.
Right.
We need to, have these open and informed discussions.
Yeah.
Consider all the different perspectives and be willing to adapt our strategies as we learn more.
Well said. Before we wrap up, I want to go back to that question from the Watch Mojo video.
Right.
That, the thought-provoking one.
Oh, yeah?
If scientists could eliminate only the disease-carrying mosquitoes
Okay.
and leave all the others, unharmed,
Right.
would you support it?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yes.
It really forces us to think about our values, our priorities. On the surface, it sounds like the perfect solution.
Right.
Be rid of the disease, keep the balance. But even then, I think there would be a lot to consider.
What specifically? What factors would kind of weigh on your decision? It's a tricky question. It seems so simple at first.
Yeah.
Get rid of the bad mosquitoes, keep the good ones. But I bet it's more complicated than that.
Oh, it definitely is. Even if we could, target specific species with perfect accuracy, there's always that chance of those unintended consequences.
Right.
These ecosystems are so complex, so interconnected.
Yeah.
Even getting rid of, what seems like an insignificant species,
Right.
it can cause these ripple effects. We might not be able to predict those, let alone control them.
So we could end up, solving one problem, but then creating a brand new one down the line.
Exactly. We've seen that happen over and over again when humans try to mess with natural systems.
Right, right.
Think back to that wolf example in Yellowstone.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
It seemed like a good idea at the time.
It did.
But then you have all those elk.
Right.
They overgraze everything, and the whole ecosystem changes.
It's a good reminder that we need to, be careful, be humble.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Nature's a lot more complicated than we think.
It really is. And we need to think about the ethics, too.
Right.
I mean, even if we could get rid of only the disease-carrying mosquitoes and not harm anything else,
Yeah.
do we really have the right to make that decision
That's a good
for the whole planet? I mean, some would say that every species